You know I was gonna wear my blue hoodie for this video, but this is such a black hoodie video.
Black. Black, black, black. Black on black, black.
Hey, welcome to my channel, and if you've been here before, welcome back. Today I just wanted to hop on here and talk about black stereotypes. The website I'm using to basically provide an outline of the different caricatures and the different stereotypes that I wanted to go over. I'm gonna link it in the bio so y'all know where it's from if you wanted to read up personally. And it's an edu source because we don't trust .com. It's not a reliable source. Me. But to start, see, this is one of those videos you don't know how to ease into. Yeah. But disclaimer, I can't find my mic, so if the audio is bad, bear with me. And number two, my family's home, so if you hear them from time to time, I don't think you should hear them though, but if you do hear them, they're living their life. Just ignore them. But to begin, I just wanted to go over the different stereotypes that are often overlooked or not mentioned, which is almost all of them because no one really knows that they're things. The Sambo stereotype, there's the savage stereotype, the mammy stereotype, and people say this one differently. Aunt Jemima. I'm gonna look it up right now. I personally say Aunt Jemima. Jemima stereotype. This website doesn't have a specific caricature that I was looking for, but the Pickaninny one, I'll talk about that and I'll find another site to cite that from. But I'm gonna talk about that one too, but this particular website doesn't include that one. But to start, I'm gonna sort of read verbatim and then sum it up in my own words and then provide my little input on it. The Sambo is one of the most enduring stereotypes in American history. This persuasive image of a simple-minded black man dates back at least as far as the colonization of America. The Sambo stereotype flourished during the reign of slavery in the United States. In fact, the notion of the happy slave is the core of the Sambo caricature. White slave owners molded African American males as a whole into this image of a jolly, overgrown child who was happy to serve his master. However, the Sambo was seen as naturally lazy and therefore reliant upon his master for direction. In this way, the institution of slavery was justified. Whipple's Southern Diary is evidence of this justification of slavery. They seem, quote, "They seem a happy race of beings, and if you did not know it, you would never imagine that they were slaves," end quote. However, it was not only slave owners who adopted the Sambo stereotype. Although the Sambo was born out of a defense for slavery, it extended far beyond these bounds. It is essential to realize that the vast scope of this stereotype was transmitted through music titles and lyrics. You don't have to read through the whole thing, but basically the Sambo stereotype is this image of a black man who is seen as a child, essentially. Someone who isn't to be taken seriously and who's just living this jolly or happy image during slavery. And it was used as a defense to justify slavery, because if the very people who were involved in it, the ones that were being belittled and tortured and taken down or considered less than, if they're happy, then why should we change the system of slavery? So you could say that slave owners put this image out there through the media to basically illustrate that, hey, we're not going to stop because look how happy they are, even though in actuality it wasn't always the case. It was never the case, actually. I don't think anybody who was enslaved wanted to be in that position. And then the savage stereotype, which is also often portrayed as a black man who had little to no self-control. It was the acts of racial violence that was justified through this stereotype, because the savage was seen as this barbaric person who needs to be put down or else, you know? So the savage was used to justify the violent aspect of the discrimination that black people felt at that time, because if you have this image being portrayed in the media of black people saying, hey, look how dangerous they are, we hurt them because they're dangerous, it makes it seem as if the white people, or I shouldn't say white people, the white slave owners hurting them made sense because they're barbaric, they're inhumane, they have no sense of morality. So us picking on them, us beating them down only makes sense because we're just treating them like the savages they are. So so far it's like these stereotypes are basically molding different reasons as to why people thought of black people as this less than human sort of figure. You know, these stereotypes were meant to justify and perpetuate the very image that we today are trying to fight. So a lot of the origins of the things we got to deal with now lay within the past. Moving on to the mammy, which is often portrayed in the media, like from, I'm trying to find examples, like basically any black woman who was plus size and had a strong mind, who cleaned and stuff like that, mammy. The mammy was a large independent woman with pitch black skin, dark skin, like me, and shining white teeth. That was a thing that slave owners tended to do. This contrast between the red on their lips, meaning the Kool-Aid, and the white of their teeth for their skin color. I thought that was like, I believe that it's like a little inner joke of look how silly they look, but in actuality our lips are not red. But that's the tea, sis. The mammy understood the value of the white lifestyle, whatever that may be. The stereotype suggests that she raised the masses children and loved them dearly, even more than her own. Her tendency to give advice to her mistress was seen as harmless and humorous. What's the joke? What's the joke? Although she treated whites with respect, the mammy was a tyrant over her own family. She dominated her children and husband, the Sambo, the simple-minded black man. This image of the mammy as the controller of the African-American male was used as further evidence of his standing under the white man. Basically, to put these two images together, the mammy and the Sambo. The Sambo was seen as childish, right? And the mammy was this headstrong black woman who cleaned. She did everything. She took the role of both the man and woman at that time, because sexism was its own thing back then also. So we have this woman who's acting as both the woman and the man, while the man is acting as a child. That basically was put out in the media to show, hey, look at this black family dynamic. They need us because the roles are reversed. This black family is dysfunctional because it doesn't fit the white America's image of a happy family, which goes to show how better we are as white people than the black people of that time. Because if you have the woman being the woman and the man being a child, it was used to belittle the black family dynamic, which wasn't, I mean, in the sense that the black man didn't have as much power as the white man, that was true, but I don't believe that the family dynamic painted of the black family was necessarily true. Because if you have an institution like slavery presiding over what they do, what do you expect? For them to live a happy life of the white American dream? Moving on to the Aunt Jemima stereotype, which stems from the mammy image. She differs from the mammy in that her duties were restricted to cooking. Yeah, it was through Aunt Jemima that the association of the African American woman was with domestic work, especially cooking. As a result, hundreds of Aunt Jemima collectibles found their way into the American kitchens. Like that pancake mix you be using on Saturday morning. That's what that came from. But you want to know what's interesting about Aunt Jemima? Like the Mammy, she was viewed as a non-sexual being. It was more about, look what she brought to our homes, rather than look at her, a woman. It was more of a, she's the help sort of figure. But the person who was painted as Aunt Jemima was this woman named Nancy Green. Hey, same last name. She was chosen because of her cheerful smile, which is quite ironic in the sense of the time, because I don't think they got much to smile about. But moving on to the sapphire stereotype, which I didn't know about before, like what, 3 weeks ago when it was like Black History Month, I found this out. But the sapphire was a stereotype solidified through the hit show Amos and Andy, which was one of the first ever black shows to air on TV. This profoundly popular series began on the radio in 1926 and developed into a television series ending in the 1950s. This cartoon show depicted the sapphire character as a bossy, headstrong woman who is engaged in an ongoing verbal battle with her husband, Kingfish. Sapphire possessed the emotional makeup of the Mammy and Aunt Jemima combined. Her fierce independence, placed her in a role of dominance, and she dominated over her foolish husband, which is sort of like the Mammy and the Sambo. So okay, so the sapphire sorts of fit into that image, but she wasn't considered the help. She was more of this black girl who was like all sass, which you often see in modern media, and it's getting old. It was cute at first, but new material would be nice. The Jezebel, which I also didn't know about until a couple weeks ago, stereotype was the bad black girl. The bad black girl who represented the undeniable sexual side of African American women. The traditional Jezebel was a light-skinned, slender mulatto girl with long straight hair and small features. Straight hair, like flat iron, I assume. She more closely resembled the European ideal for beauty than any pre-existing images, whereas the Mammy, Aunt Jemima, and Sapphire were decidedly asexual images. This stereotype was immensely attractive to white males. The creation of the hypersexual Jezebel served to absolve white males of responsibility in the sexual abuse and rape of African American women. Black women in such cases were said to be quote-unquote asking for it. Basically, the Jezebel stereotype is this image of a black woman who is unruly, essentially, where she is fully absorbed into her like sexual side. So if anything were to happen to such a woman, like rape for example, it would be no one's fault but hers, because look at her, look how she's dressing, she's asking for it. And I believe that this image was often used to cover up a lot of the things that white males would do to black women, because the way that they made these women out to be dressing and acting and presenting themselves was basically to show we aren't doing anything wrong. It's them who wants it, because look how they present themselves. But I'm glad that we know, or at least I hope we know, in this year 2020, a woman could dress however she feels and shouldn't be in fear of being assaulted. And then I'm on this other site. Once again, I'm gonna link all of my sites below of the Pickaninny caricature, because I wanted to like braze over this too. I found out about this like a couple months ago, and it's an interesting dynamic, because I'm not quite sure myself what they were hoping to portray through this image. So I hope this website could teach me and you what was going on. But basically it says here that the Pickaninny, I hope I'm saying that right, was the dominant racial caricature of black children for most of the country's history. They were child coons. Okay. Pickaninnies had bulging eyes, unkept hair, red lips, and wide mouths in which they stuffed huge slices of watermelon. They were themselves tasty morsels for alligators. Yes, that's a whole thing that we could talk about separately if anyone's interested. But they used to feed black babies. No, I shouldn't say feed. They used to bait black babies to alligators. Like, they would use black babies to lure alligators. I want you to let that sink in. That messed my mind up when my teacher told me. Like, for a couple weeks, my mind was still like trying to like really sink in with the fact that they really didn't have any regards for black life at the time. But it says here that the first famous pickaninny was Topsy, a poorly dressed, neglected enslaved girl. Topsy appeared in Harriet Beecher Stowe's anti-slavery novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin. She was created to show the evils of slavery. Here was an untamable wild child who had been corrupted by slavery. She was one of the blackest of her race, and her round shining eyes, glittering as glass beads, moved with quick and restless glances over everything in the room. Okay, I guess they were trying to create this image of the pickaninnies to show that children aren't being valued the way they should, but the way that they did it was poor. They did it poorly. Wow, I might put some of these images up on the screen, but this is crazy. They even have a little black Sambo. With all of that being said, I want to know what y'all think. Y'all can pause the video and tell me, because I'm speechless. Like, with all of these things like put together, it really makes me think now, okay, they went through all of these things to justify the hateful and evil things they've done, but never once acknowledged the fact that they had to justify it, you know? Meaning that they knew it was wrong, but they had to find ways to cover it up. I just, personally, I'm wondering, why didn't anyone say, hey, look at these excuses that we keep on making, why not just be better human beings in general? But I guess to each their own. But that's all I have to really say for this video. And until next time, and I don't know what I'm gonna talk about next, but I think I'm gonna keep on going with this black education type thing, and maybe like go into some immigration stuff maybe. But yeah, thanks for watching. That's so weird. I don't know how YouTubers do this, bruh.
Basically, just enjoy them. Enjoy it. It's a wonderful thing.